Hello. Today we're going to be taking a look at Frank McCourt's Typhoid Fever. This video will probably be like the first video, and you'll have to watch some others to complete the assignment. So just be aware that this is just part one of the videos. So let's get started. As with any story, if there is some background information that you need, it's important that you start there because that information will increase your comprehension as you read the story. And for typhoid fever, there is some background information, and you might just not knowing what that means, typhoid fever, that would be a good thing to look up. Now it's going to give us that information here, so we won't have to go look it up. But if you were reading this on your own, you might take that into consideration. If you're taking a standardized test, then a lot of times there is a section beforehand that might go into some background information. Always be sure to read that. It's critically important, and they're giving that information to you for a reason. So here in the background section, it says, Angela's Ashes, which is the title of a book from which this short story is a small piece of. It says, Angela's Ashes is Frank McCourt's gritty, moving memoir of growing up in Limerick, Ireland in the 1930s and 1940s. McCourt's family lived in a filthy, overcrowded slum, and bacterial diseases such as typhoid fever and diphtheria were common. Typhoid fever, caused by contaminated food or water, wastes the whole body. Diphtheria, spread by contact with an infected person, starts with a sore throat and can end in suffocation. Because both infections spread easily, people with these illnesses are quarantined. In Ireland, they were isolated in what were called fever hospitals, and most of these hospitals were run by the Catholic Church and staffed by nuns, Catholicism being a popular religion in Ireland. McCourt caught typhoid fever. So the author of this story caught typhoid fever at age 10 and was sent to a fever hospital. And this is his story of that experience being a 10-year-old. So you can imagine, if you can rewind in your mind a little bit, being 10, you unfortunately have some experience with quarantine, or at least quarantine type of events that you've experienced due to the pandemic. And this is the 1930s, 1940s, before television, before people had widespread access to lots of things that we might find entertaining. So the experience that Frank McCourt went through is something we can kind of imagine, but it would also be very different from our experiences as of late. So let's start this story. You will notice in this story, Frank McCourt does not use quotation marks to set off the words that are said out loud. Usually when we're reading something and one of the characters says words out loud, it is marked off by quotation marks. Not in this story. You'll be able to figure out from context who's saying what, but it does take a little getting used to at the start of the story. All right. So it's important to make sure that you're reading along as we go through this. So Typhoid Fever by Frank McCourt. The room next to me is empty till one morning a girl's voice says, Yoo-hoo, who's there? I'm not sure if she's talking to me or someone in the room beyond. Yoo-hoo, boy with the typhoid, are you awake? I am. Are you better? I am. Well, why are you here? I don't know. I'm still in the bed. They stick needles in me and give me medicine. What do you look like? I wonder, what kind of a question is that? I don't know what to tell her. Yoo-hoo, are you there? Typhoid boy. I am. What's your name? Frank. That's a good name. My name is Patricia Madigan. How old are you? 10. Oh, she sounds disappointed. But I'll be 11 in August next month. Well, that's better than 10. I'll be 14 in September. Do you want to know why I'm in the fever hospital? I do. I have diphtheria and something else. What's something else? They don't know. They think I have a disease from foreign parts because my father used to be in Africa. I nearly died. Are you going to tell me what you look like? I have black hair. You and millions. I have brown eyes with bits of green. That's called hazel. You in thousands. I have stitches in the back of my right hand and my 2 feet where they put in the soldier's blood. Oh, did they? They did. You won't be able to stop marching and saluting. There's a swish of habit and click of beads, and then Sister Rita's voice. Now, what's this? There's to be no talking between two rooms, especially when it's a boy and a girl. Do you hear me, Patricia? I do, sister. Do you hear me, Francis? I do, sister. You could be giving thanks for your two remarkable recoveries. You could be saying the rosary. You could be reading the little messenger of the Sacred Heart that's beside your beds. Don't let me come back and find you talking. She comes into my room and wags her finger at me. Especially you, Francis, after thousands of boys prayed for you at the confraternity. Give thanks, Francis. Give thanks. She leaves and there's silence for a while. Then Patricia whispers, Give thanks, Francis. Give thanks. And say your rosary, Francis. And I laugh so hard a nurse runs in to see if I'm all right. She's a very stern nurse from the county Kerry, and she frightens me. What's this, Francis? Laughing? What is there to laugh about? Are you and that Madigan girl talking? I'll report you to Sister Rita. There's to be no laughing for you. You could be doing serious damage to your internal apparatus. She plods out, and Patricia whispers again in a heavy Kerry accent. No laughing, Francis. You could be doing serious damage to your internal apparatus. Say your rosary, Francis, and pray for your internal apparatus. So, just to sort of explain what's going on, right? The kids are in a fever hospital. They're in two different rooms because they have two different diseases. And so they don't want to obviously catch the other disease that they don't currently have. And just as you might imagine, a 10 and 14-year-old are going to chit-chat. That's more entertaining than reading, as sad as that is to say. And the nuns come in and yell at them. The nuns are very stern and strict and want the rules followed exactly. And the kids are trying to entertain themselves. And so they're teasing the nurses, obviously not to their faces. That could be problematic for them. But they're chit-chatting. But the nurses do have a good reason for having them separated. Because, again, they do have two separate diseases. That Frank has typhoid fever, and Patricia has diphtheria. So there are two different diseases. They don't want to catch them. Continuing on. Mom visits me on Thursdays. I'd like to see my father too, but I'm out of danger. Crisis time is over, and I'm allowed only one visitor. Besides, she says he's back at work at Rank's Flour Mills, and please God, this job will last a while with the war on and the English desperate for flour. She brings me a chocolate bar, and that proves Dad is working. She could never afford it on the dole, which means on like the welfare in Ireland. He sends me notes. He tells me my brothers are all praying for me, that I should be a good boy, obey the doctors, the nuns, the nurses, and don't forget to say my prayers. He's sure St. Jude pulled me through the crisis because he's the patron saint of desperate cases, and I was indeed a desperate case. Patricia says she has two books by her bed. One is a poetry book, and that's the one she loves. The other is a short history of England, and Do I Want It? She gives it to Seamus, the man who mops the floors every day, and he brings it to me. He says, I'm not supposed to be bringing anything from a diphtheria room to a typhoid room with all the germs flying around and hiding between the pages. If you ever catch diphtheria on top of the typhoid, they'll know, and I'll lose my good job and be out on the streets singing patriotic songs with a tin cup in my hand, which I could easily do because there isn't a song ever written about Ireland's sufferings I don't know, and a few songs about the joy of whiskey, too. So Seamus is doing them a favor by transferring the book between the rooms. The nuns would not allow that. And this concludes part 1 of 3 to cover typhoid fever.